Hey, Demetrius Gelatis here with Nate. How's it going, Nate? Nate Tam.
Hey, it's going good. How are you, man?
Doing all right. Sensei Nate teaches pool on YouTube. I feel embarrassed to ask this. I've watched some of your videos lately, but I haven't been super. Have you posted a lot of stuff lately, or are you a little bit? That's what I thought
No,
because I've normally keep up pretty good. I'm like, I don't think I've seen what's been going on. Tell me why. I know your cup is full in life. Talk to me about your YouTube channel.
no, you said it. My cup is full. I,
Yeah.
I'm, I don't have easy access to a table kind of at my fingertips anymore. I did, before last summer, which is why I was putting out more videos then. But the last few months, I just don't have access to a table. And if I do get access to a table, I kind of just want to focus on my game. I'm still in the mode where I'm like, I just want to improve as much as possible. I'm not really trying to grow the channel. It's not a money maker for me. I've made 0 cents from that channel. It's not monetized at all. I just put work out or I put content out as a way of improving myself. It's pretty selfish, I guess, but I'm not
Well,
asking for
and
likes or
you're
subs.
it's a
It's
bit of an
just
artist too, because when you see something that you can offer to the pool world that you know is either unique in terms of content or just in terms of the way you present things, and you're also sharing with others along the way, and I appreciate that. But yeah, it's definitely a labor of love. I know, you've got a wife, 4 children, job, and now a puppy, and so and then you're still trying to play pool as your primary. I mean, you're a pool player, you're not just like some you actually want to play your own game. So how's that been going? Talk to me about your pool game.
uh for a guy who only gets to play once or twice a week, I feel like I'm hitting the ball pretty well. Um, it's so crazy how well you can still improve or at least maintain your skill level, even if you're not playing all the time, if you're focusing on the right things or setting up the right game or playing the right people, etc. So
The
I
the
feel like
right
I'm playing
game,
okay.
the right game being
So
someone that has no chance of winning. No, I'm just kidding. But no, one thing, do you still watch some pro pool?
some
Not
some
much.
meaning
Okay.
like a ton. Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. I thought so. I think that watching pro pool helps you stay in stroke, um, and just visualize, I mean, just all those, any matches you watch. I'm not saying it's as good as playing on your own, but like, boy, if like, okay, I'll put it this way: if somebody had a choice between playing 20 hours a week or playing 18 hours a week and watching 2 hours of pro pool, I'd bet on the guy watching 2 hours of pro pool and playing 18 hours
Yeah, yeah.
because you're just modeling, right? Imaging, and what do you call that? Like imagery or modeling, or what do you call that?
Imitating.
Visualization. Yeah,
Yeah. I
imitating.
don't know. I don't know. I know a handful of players who watch a ton of pool and they do nothing like a pro does. So I think just to each
That's
their
a
own. But
curious. How do you explain that? Like what, like that is really weird. That would be like watching, that would be like trying to like study chess and be watching this opening. Like I'm going to spend 2 hours watching this opening on the Scandinavian. I'm like, okay, so after he challenges my queen, I'm going to go to A5. All right, I'm going to move queen to A5. I see everybody's moving queen to A5. Then you go to the board, they attack your queen, and you just like panic and move the queen to the other H files. Like what? Like that wasn't what the video said. Why? What do you think is the disconnect? How does that work?
I don't know. Well, I mean, I don't know if that's the majority of players who watch a lot of pool, but I just know some people that do watch a lot of pool and they don't try to mimic pro pool at all when they play. Now, maybe that's just because I don't see them you know, in the grease as much, or I don't see them in tournaments, etc. But uh, yeah, I don't know, man. There are, I don't know how 9 billion people in the world, 8 million, 9 billion personalities in the world too, I guess. So who knows?
Yeah, so obviously there's a big subsection of people that are just watching for entertainment, not with any real motivation to improve.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I also wonder, it's got to be something where you only take away what you already understand, and that like if something doesn't make sense to you, you're not going to remember it. So if I gave you a sequence of numbers like 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, you'd easily be able to remember those numbers. But if I told you 43, 107, 20, 22, 16, and 19, you probably already forgot. So it's like the problem is if it's not organized and sensible. So when somebody's watching pool, the things that they pick up when they're watching pro players, if they don't have the conceptual models and vocabulary in their mind to understand what the pros are doing, then they're not gonna even notice. So like if a beginner, for example, if somebody that never played pool before, a total novice, if they watched Shane run a table, at the end of it, if you said, "What did you notice that he did?" They'd be like, "Well, he shot them all." I'd be like, "Yeah," but like they're not going to sit there and be like, "Well, I noticed that he really made sure he had a good angle on the 7 because it was going to be tricky." Like they're not going to notice that, right? Because how would they? They don't have that built in their mind. And so on the one hand, watching pro pool can allow you to make discoveries about the game if you're engaged and curious. Like, why are they doing that? Why did he play it there? Oh, and then if you say, "Why I might not have done it that way? Why did he?" Then maybe that leads you to make some discoveries. But if you're watching and you just see, you might just at the surface, you might only just notice what you already know about the game, which is what they're doing that you do. And I see this a lot when I see players where I know how they think and I know how they play. And then they watch a pro do something different than they did, and they said, "Yeah, that's what I would have done." I'm like, "No, I've seen you play. That's not what." Anyway, does that make sense?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that it's kind of akin to learning one pocket. Because if you know one pocket, you play a lot of one pocket, chances are you can play other games decently well too. But it doesn't work vice versa. So
You know
I
what,
don't know.
man? Funny story about that. I was watching a match. Jesse played against Josh Filler in the 2024 one pocket or 2023 one pocket against Filler. It was 2023. He played Filler in the one pocket at Derby.
Hey, Derby,
And,
okay.
Filler won 3-0, but Jesse, to be fair, I actually thought Jesse held up pretty well considering the circumstances. There's a video of me losing 3-0 to Filler in about 7 minutes. So anyway,
Well, I believe that was the year that Filler went straight through
dude,
all of one pocket in
yeah,
Derby, right? Like
yeah,
I believe he ran 8 and out either 2 or 3 times on Evan Lunda, who won
yeah,
it the following year, and
yeah,
it was
yeah.
it's a match in 9 minutes. It's insane.
There was
Sorry.
in my, if anybody wants to see me lose like 3-0 in 8 minutes, you can find it. It's on YouTube. Demetrius, Josh Filler. I know they're all out there. These days, every match is streamed. And it's like when you're playing bad, it's just like, of course it's streamed. Put it on the front page of YouTube. That's fine. But anyway, I
Oh,
was watching.
so that's a good sort of leeway into what I know you wanted to talk about because you had an experience at a tournament where all the tables were streamed, right?
It's been that way a lot, actually.
Oh, really?
Super Billiard Expo was, I think all the tables were streamed. And then Derby, I think they're all streamed. I can't remember all of them. I mean, I was on the stream at the Texas Open, but I think that was just that one table.
Okay.
I don't know. It just seems like these days, and then even when the tournament's not streaming, everybody's got their little cell phone stick, and everybody's a goddamn pro these days, and everybody's gonna go viral, and everybody's trying to make that double bank shot. But no, what I was gonna say is, just real quick, when I was playing Jesse, or when I was watching Jesse play Filler, there was one shot on the first rack. Scott Frost was doing commentary, and Jesse hit what I thought was a good shot. And Scott said, "Well, he really should have brought his cue ball further down table because where he left it, he's going to have a lot of returns." And in this situation, I'm looking at it, I'm like, "Oh, he hit a good shot. That's just kind of nitpicky." And then like 2 shots later, that cost him the game. I'm like, "Okay, it wasn't nitpicky." I'm like, "All right, maybe that mattered. Okay, maybe that mattered." And maybe if you're not
That's
playing
funny.
filler, that wouldn't matter. But it's funny, man. It's funny. So, because he was like, "Yeah, maybe that just shows a little inexperience on Jesse's part." And I'm thinking, Jesse plays this game great, man. I'm telling you, getting all defensive on my buddy's behalf, and then I'm like,
And he
okay,
probably plays more one pocket than Josh Filler does.
yeah, 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 exactly. But anyway, so yeah, yeah. So then meanwhile, I should introduce myself for people that don't already know. I'm Demetrius Shalatis, and I do want to plug my boot camp really quick. I'm a coach. I play pool, and I teach pool. And I do 3-day pool boot camps. And for my plug today, so Nate, we've been talking about getting you out here this year. We have some hurdles to overcome to make it happen. Of course, it's not easy to always make a trip like that. But whether or not it comes to pass, my question for you: you are a hell of a player. What's your Fargo now, Nate?
Oh, it's like 6:30, but I don't compete really ever.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, come on, man. No reason to be ashamed. Okay, so what he really is saying, guys, is that he actually plays like 670 speed, and if he was playing a little bit more, he'd be hitting 7. I'm just giving you a hard time, but no. Trust me, man, you're gonna fit. All you gotta do is find like a 640 and under tournament, and we're gonna go to town. So anyway, my question is, you're a hell of a player, and you're very knowledgeable. I mean, you have your own instructional channel. You're making content. You've seen plenty of pro pool matches. You just said you've trained with some very good players. You've studied this game. You've read the books. You've watched the videos. Why would a guy like you want to come to a boot camp with me? Like, I just want to hear from your perspective, maybe, and try to make it good for the camera.
There are some things you can't learn by watching, and there are some things you can't know you need to learn by watching, or just by, trying to figure out on your own. I think I've had enough and I've had enough instructors, and I've had enough, general coaching, and I've had, other sports background as well, to know that you need an outside eye to really understand where you need to gear your goals towards, what you need to work on. And then having a high level example is also really key, right? So, and I know you talked about this before, so not trying to throw it back on you, but this is the just I'm just repeating what you've said before, where there are players that can go to your boot camp and they will never know how to strike the ball unless you show them how, right? And I think that can be true regardless of your level, including mine. So
Very cool. I appreciate that. And when I work with a player like you, I get the same way that you feel when you're going to play a match against a guy that's higher rated than you, when it matters to you. I feel that way. Like, this is exciting, challenging, and scary, because of course my biggest fear would be you come out here and I'm like, you're like, bro, I already know all this stuff. And that's like, what are you doing? And I wish I had come. Like, that's always my biggest fear. Now, that hasn't, I shouldn't say that's never happened. I've been doing this 5 years. I've had a few hundred people fly out to my house. But, I've probably had two or three people that I think would maybe wish they hadn't come trained with me. But when you're dealing with, if it's 1%, like if it's 1%, I still wish that it was 100%, not 99, but I can't be too hard on myself for that. But
no.
I think that I get really nervous. Like, what am I going to show this guy? And it's always really scary. But then I will tell you, I really, really, really know this game. And it's like, it's just unbelievable. Like, I mean, of course, right? And I'm not the only one, right? But I've been playing this game and studying this game and working on this game and traveling around and playing these guys. And I've figured some things out about the game. And I think what I've done, what I can do differently. So for this, my little pitch to people is that I have a few differences between me and most instructors or coaches. I'm not like a traditional, I'm going to help you, learn how to stand, or I'm going to teach you what the tangent line is. Like, I'm assuming that when you come train with me, that you're a passionate pool player that plays a good game. I work with intermediate to advanced. If you have questions about what that is, reach out to me. But I think that I have ways. I think that I have ways of conceptualizing parts of the game that are hard to get your head around. So, like, there's tangible, visible parts of the game, like whether you pocket a ball or, whether or not you hook yourself. Like, these things are very black and white, concrete. But there's parts of the game that are a little bit more, like when it comes to mental game or when it comes to strategy, patterns, cue ball control, there's parts of the game that get a little bit hard to get your head around. And I've found ways of putting it and explaining it to people that helps them see the game differently and then play the game differently, so that they can watch pro pool players for hours after hour and not really pick up on what they're doing. And I have ways of understanding and explaining it. I also have some really good abilities to where I can watch somebody play. I had a student come over yesterday for a short 4-hour lesson, short. And
Sure.
This guy has taken lessons from a lot of people. He's watched all the videos. He's a very good player. And I felt like within 15 minutes with him, I felt like I knew his pool game better than anyone else, better than he did. And I was able to find some spots for this game that nobody else is going to bring up and talk about, because they're just like, oh, I noticed you hit this shot wrong. Or most people just watch, and then if you make mistakes, they point out mistakes you made and try to help you work on those things. But it's like, I don't know, man. I just see a little deeper. So I see really deep. I care about my student. I know where they're at. I know I can figure out how they can grasp stuff and how they can learn stuff. And then I could just show them the parts of their game that are missing in a way that makes light bulbs go on. So that was a little vague, but I'm really bad at a lot of things in life, and I'm good at a couple things. And this is something I was really, really meant to do. So for people that I understand that there's everybody's teaching these days, all these pro players, they're traveling around, nobody can make a living. So everyone's offering clinics and everyone's offering training and everyone's got their YouTube video. I'm not here to give you information. There's already too much noise on the airwaves, too much information out there. I'm not here to change how you stand or stroke, but I can soul read exactly what's in your pool game and what's missing, and I can show it to you in a way that will make it visible, and then I can show you a path to actually make progress there. And you're not going to have when you go home, you're not going to have one or two things. You're like, well, I'm glad I got A or I'm glad I got B. You're going to have the damn alphabet. So that's what I do. So if you're interested in pool training, come work with me. Okay, long enough. Thank you for your patience, Nate.
I'll add one thing is that so many people know how to strike a ball well. They know general pattern play well, safeties, etc. Like what you're saying, there's a lot of instruction out there for people to to pick up on by themselves. What people don't have is direction. So I would say that's what you offer.
That's a good point, and I think that I talked about this with my guy yesterday too. There's like the forest and the trees. A lot of people are working. A lot of instructors will pick up on a detail here, a detail here. When you hit this shot, hit it that way, and that's great. But like I see the whole picture, and I can help people figure out. Yeah, like you said, it's about direction. It's about what's missing and what should they be working on to actually make real progress and not just pick up a tip on banking. Yeah. So okay, I appreciate everyone's patience. I have to keep plugging the boot camp because that's my job. So, but now we're going to get into some even more cool stuff. What were we going to talk about? We're going to talk about embracing and understanding your challenge, some of the changes in the game, and then you had some thoughts on rhythm of play, deliberation versus flow, some things like that. So that's kind of our rough agenda. Sound right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll start with the change thing because this could be a short topic or a long one depending on how it goes. But the challenge that you get from playing pool is not always the challenge that you want. So when we think of ourselves, it's really easy to create a story arc that has us as the hero, that has our best game as where we've already reached. And then that sets a goal of being at a higher level and achieving new high runs, high watermark victories, new big cashes, proving this to myself, proving that to so-and-so, showing, winning this tournament or beating that guy. It's really easy to picture, to look at ourselves kind of statically as we are here. And then that's where I want to go. And then my challenge is getting from here to there. And then I'm going to work on it and I'm going to get that. But what I've learned is that life doesn't always work that way. So I'll give you my story, but let me give you some examples. Suppose a guy has a work injury and ends up throwing out his back, takes some time away from pool and goes through some rehab. And after 3 months of not playing, can't get into the same stance he used to. And all of a sudden, he struggles to do things he used to be able to do before. And he's frustrated because I used to play better, and now I'm a little bit off on every shot. It's coming a little tougher. I'm not playing as well as I used to. And if I do things that I think feel like, the way I want to, it actually starts to cause me pain, and I don't want to hurt my back again. So now we've got some new challenges, which is finding new ways to stand that don't hurt, and then trying to find a way that's still somewhat effective. But meanwhile, your Fargo rate's going down, and your cashes and tournaments are going down, and people are beating you that didn't used to beat you. That could be very frustrating. Or maybe you're getting older, and your energy levels are going down, and it's hard to stay and play these tournaments late, and you used to be able to, but now you're just your eyesight's a little different, your stamina's a little different, and you're watching your game deteriorate a little bit. Well, that wasn't the plan. And for me, there's been a couple things that have thrown some curveballs in my journey. In 2020, when I joined this podcast and I started doing this, I was like, my Fargo rate was like 740 something. And I was, ranked in like the top 50 of the country Fargo rate. So of course, what do I think? I think, well, if I'm a 745 now, then give me 5 more years and then I can learn a few things and run it a few times and get even better. Maybe I could get 750, 760. Maybe I can hit the top 20 in the country. Maybe I can start winning some tournament, whatever. Okay, fair enough. It makes sense. But then some things have changed. And some of those things have been me changing, and some of those things have been the competition changing. So the competition has gotten quite a bit tougher over the last 5 years. And meanwhile, my game, I've gone through a bit of a slump, and we can talk about that or not, but like I'm playing a little bit worse. The competition's playing a little bit better. My Fargo rate's been falling. All of a sudden, it's like, well, that's not the plan. And I think that it's really easy to get discouraged or frustrated, be like, that's not how it's supposed to go. This is not supposed to be the challenge I'm facing. I'm supposed to be facing the challenge of trying to figure out how to get from 750 to 760. I'm not supposed to be trying to figure out how did I used to play as good as I did. You know what I mean? I was already there though. And so my thought for the day, at least for this part, is like, it doesn't matter. Your absolute level of play does not matter. It doesn't matter if you don't get more rewarded from the game the higher your Fargo goes. The journey doesn't become more meaningful the higher your Fargo goes. The meaning comes from facing your challenge head on and doing everything you can to do your best to overcome it. And just because it's not the challenge that you told yourself in that story about how it was going to go, hey, maybe adapting. And so dealing with the challenges I'm dealing with, they're not the challenges that I thought I was going to be dealing with. They weren't the challenges that I wanted to be dealing with, but that's what I have. And so I can either whine about how it's not the way the story went in my mind from 5 years ago, or I can open my eyes, accept the reality, and enjoy dealing with the problems I have. And I think that there's meaning in taking on our challenges and accepting and embracing and meeting them head on, even if they're not the ones that we thought we wanted. Does that that was kind of what was on my mind. Does that make sense? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I know this is not a religious podcast by any way, but have you ever heard the phrase "man plans and God laughs"?
Yes, I have. That's good. I like that though.
Or something similar to that. I don't know if that was it verbatim, but yeah, that's what comes to my mind. It's just that's welcome to life. It's so funny that we all have these dreams and aspirations, but only less than 1% of us ever actually get to make it work. Look at Hollywood, dude. I live in LA and I work in the industry. That's everyone and their mom. So maybe that's just part of life, or maybe that's just part of being a pool player. But if you are lucky enough to face the challenges that you want to face, then you are unlike the rest of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you want to talk at all about the specific challenges that?
Yeah. So here's what's happened. I would say that there's the two things, because this kind of fades into the other conversation, which is changes in the game. So it's super funny, man. I've had 3 people in my life give me lessons. And one of them was really useful. And the other 2 were very destructive. And what happens is we think about pool as a linear journey where you just get better and better. But sometimes, you're always trying to figure out how to make it better. But sometimes the things we do to try to make it better make it worse. And I mean, that's part of experimenting. You gotta, and sometimes it's hard to know. And then the problem is sometimes when things get worse, you can't always flip it off again, or you can't always switch it back. It's like if you bend a spoon back and forth too many times, it breaks, or it's not as sturdy as it used to be.
Right.
So with my fundamentals, I've had 3 people try to change my fundamentals in my life. One of them was a very good change. One of them was very useful. 2 of them really caused me problems, where it kinked up the way I shoot. It made it more cumbersome. It made it where it didn't flow and it wasn't as accurate. And then when I tried to figure out how I used to do it, I couldn't figure out how I used to do it. And it was always some in between. And then it was like, it affected my confidence. And and then you start thinking about it too much. So now you're thinking about how you're doing what you're doing too much. and your confidence in what you're doing is a little bit off, and it's frustrating, and your actual performance is off, and then it creates a lack of confidence kind of comes out in other ways, because then when you're playing matches, you're worried about certain shots coming up because you're like, oh, those are the ones that I used to be able to make, and it creates like just there's a whole snake pit of problems that get opened up when somebody tells you to do something and you kick up your fundamentals and can't figure out how to get back again. And so that's another, when it comes to instruction, I think you've got to be really careful about who you trust and who you let guide you, because if somebody's understands the game, understands you, is connected with you, cares about you, and is soft spoken, bedside manner, thoughtful about how they're going to instruct and how they're going to lead. I think that's critical, because if you have somebody that's just going to grab you by the leash and yank you down a certain road because they have a higher Fargo rate than you and they know what's best, boy, is it dangerous, man. It's like a surgeon that's like drinking and thinks they know. No, I've done this before. It's like, whew. Anyway, so my fundamentals, that's been one challenge, Nate, and it's been a long one. It's not black and white. It's not one problem that started at X date. It's like there's been a journey. And then what's cool? Well, what's funny is that I could, in a lot of ways, I could work around a lot of these problems because I'm a good enough player and I know this game well enough and I have enough edges that when I play other players, I can just outmove them. I can keep my cue ball under control. I can make really routine runouts again and again and again. I run the balls out well, and I can use all my edges to compensate for the fact that if this came down to like certain types of striking shots, I might not be able to keep up. Like there's shots that if we set up, you might outperform me in some shots, but if we played, I'd probably be able to like have enough little edges to where I'd get there. But that doesn't mean I'm not soft in some areas. And so when I went to the Super Billiard Expo last week, I had a lot of adversity. I had a very difficult draw. And then I also got a bit unlucky in terms of like the way the match is played. Sometimes bad luck occurs, and I don't focus on it. You can't deny that it can happen. Getting kissed in on a break at a critical time. I had 2 shots where I had to do the kick and stick, kick the ball up table, and both times it hit the point of the side pocket. It bounced back up and sold out a shot where it's like, it's a little. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad luck. Like I was the one that hit it there, but still, it's like, there's just certain things where when things, and sometimes when you have a close match, a couple of those things happening, then the guy runs out and grabs a rack behind it. And you're just like, oh man, it's like these little things are just killing me.
Yeah, you're just trying to catch a break at that point, and it won't give it to you.
And the tough draw. I mean, for example, my second round, I won my first match, and then my second match, I played that Putis Labutis, who's the guy that won the big table.
That guy.
Oof. Trust, yeah. So he beat
me like 800, right?
Oh yeah, and he won the big table 10 ball at Derby this year. So he beat Filler in the finals. He's striking pretty good. And so when I played him, man, it was like that's a tough second round. Like that's a tough second round. There's still a lot of players. So the reason I'm saying all this is I'm not complaining about my bad luck. There's part of me in the moment that's like, oh, why is this? How come I couldn't draw somebody that maybe misses a ball, or how come I couldn't whatever? But and I'm sharing this with people because I want them to learn how I think about this stuff too. Is like, I'm like, yes, there's the stuff I can't control. I get a little bad at draw, a little bit unlucky with the way stuff played out. True. But there's also some other things that are true, which is how did I handle it? How did I respond? And how well did I do? And the fact was that while I got a little unlucky, I also had opportunities that I could have used to win sets. And so rather than focus on the things I can't control, I actually was kind of grateful that it was that hard, because I'm like, had I gotten a better draw and played somebody that missed a few extra balls, and I was able to use some of my edges and other ways to work around some of these things in my game, I might have been able to limp through a few extra matches and sweep some of this stuff under the rug and be like, oh, it's not so bad. I can handle it. It's okay. But the way it played out, it was very difficult. And but it made it very clear. It just, so up until now, like I've been kind of like, I don't know, I haven't been conclusive that I've really had a problem with certain parts of my game. I'm like, well, maybe it's just one shot's bothering me, or maybe I'm just not focused hard enough, or maybe I'm just, everybody has ups and downs, and when I'm hitting them good, I'm still hitting them good. So is this really a problem, or am I just did I in my mind am I better? Did I used to be better than I think I used to be better than I really was. But this actually really exposed that no, there are some problems that I've got to address. And so even though it was difficult to go through, and at first maybe not the diagnosis you want, it's like, oh, I've got problems in my game. But if I do, it's better to goddamn know about them. And at least the adversity I faced brought it out where I could see it clearly and really know what the issues are. And then it put a lot of pressure on those parts of my game because I can't just work around this stuff at the highest level. These guys, I don't have enough edges to work. I can't work around this stuff against Labutus. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I'm like, I went from being like a little bit whiny, like, oh, I'm a little unlucky and it sucks to lose, to being like, no, like, I'm really glad that they put that much pressure on this part of my game. And it's just cemented crystal clear. I'm going to have to find a way to get this done. And then the funny part is I came back home and some light bulbs went off that are really awesome. And so anyway, it's just a funny experience. It's a funny experience. Uh, what do you?
That's cool. Well, that's cool to know that you came home and you were able to realize you were actively working on stuff that you had gone wrong at the
So
expo or what?
so one of the guys that beat me, he ended up taking fourth in the pro am. He knocked me out of the pro am. Um, and even that was close. He's actually from California. He moved from Estonia. His name was Oliver. I'd
Oh,
have to
Oliver
Ruger.
Ruger.
Do you know him?
Yeah, that I don't know him, but man, I've seen that guy play. He's good. Yeah, he beat
So
Filler in one of their tournaments. I think last year,
yeah. So again,
maybe in Vegas.
I played him second round of the pro am. So I won my first. There was 2 out of 3 races to 6. My first match, I won 6-2, 6-1. I was hitting him very well, and then I played Oliver. And I didn't know how good he played. I don't look up people's Fargo anymore. It just doesn't help me. So I knew obviously everybody's good. But when I played him, I was playing very well. And I got ahead 2 out of 3 races to 6. I got ahead 5-3. And then I broke and I got kissed to the side and he ran out and broke and ran out to go hill hill. I'm like, just like getting kissed in on the side there, alternate the break. It was really frustrating. And then I break hill hill and we have this really weird rack. And it ended up coming down to where I was kicking and left him no shot. He kicked and left me no shot. I played a safety, almost hooked him, went an inch too far, left him a long, hard shot. He put it down and ran out to beat me 6-5. I'm like, all right. The second set, I played really good, and I think I won 6-3. And then the third set, I was cruising along. I was up 2-1 with a chance to run out, and I missed a critical shot. I fumbled, and then all after that, he kind of didn't look back, and he beat me like 6-4. So in the end, it was like our scores were almost even. He beat me, like I beat him a set 6-3. He beat me a set 6-4. And then he had this one hill that kind of things went his way, and it was like super close. And then he went on and took third, fourth in the tournament, so he tied for third or whatever. So the guy's obviously a great player, and to play him second round is a little unlucky, and then to have it go that way, like it was obviously didn't have to, but. The reason I bring it up, he's a hell of a player. And he does some things really well that I struggle with. And afterwards, he walked up to me and he said, hey, it looks like I could see that you've been trying to work on some things in your game. And I see you struggling with something that I used to struggle with. And I feel like I could probably help you. And I was like, man, I'm all ears. Like, it's always a little sensitive after I lost. I'm like, don't you know I'm an instructor and I know this game.
Yeah. There are some players who will tell that guy off, and then other players who will be like, yes, please tell me.
Yeah,
So
I was like, because like I was both, because my first reaction is like, I know how to play this game, but I'm like, no, obviously there's more I need to learn, and there's something I'm doing wrong. So I'm all ears. So I texted him, I got his number, I texted him, and then I followed up with him, and he said he was going to send me something that he'd written, and I haven't seen it yet. So, but then the funny part is, without even having him tell me what he was going to tell me, because it was late, it was like 1:30 in the morning, we weren't going to talk about that, but without even having heard back from him, just knowing that he saw something, I'm like, what did he see? And then like, I think I figured something out, and I'm curious now. I should follow up with him still because I kind of still want to know what he was going to say. But I might have figured out what he was going to tell me. Isn't that weird?
No, not really. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Sorry.
So,
Yeah.
So the point of this is I just wanted to share my experience of like of kind of part of me was like, well, I don't want to have these problems, and I just wish I just didn't have these issues, and I'd never gone through those fundamental changes, and I struck like I used to, because then I could be the guy that's doing this, and I could be there instead. But it's like if we went for a hike because we wanted to go for a hike, and our plan was originally to go, you know, to the top of that bluff and look down at the city. But then as we were walking, it turned out that like that trail got washed away, and it was because of the rain yesterday. It was a little bit too exposed, and they closed down the trail because there's some open falls. So we're like, you know what? Instead, let's go over there instead. Like if we're just enjoying our hike, like there's no reason to be like, well, I wish I was over on that other bluff. It's like, why? You're walking? You like walking? There's nowhere over there that you're missing out on because you're here. It's like wherever you are is where you're supposed to be. Deal with the damn challenge in front of you. If my challenge is trying to figure out a way to age gracefully, rebuild parts of my game that broke, and try to find a way to keep up with the competition that's getting better and better, hey, who cares if my rating or who cares if my ranking is falling as an army of 20-year-olds that don't miss show up? It's like it doesn't affect my journey, which is I have a challenge and I get to face it and enjoy it. So that was kind of
Yeah,
my experience I wanted to share with people, because
I
everyone's
like
got their
that
own
answer.
challenge, and unless filler happens to be listening to this, everyone's got their own challenge, and maintaining their title is probably not your challenge. If you're listening to this podcast, your challenges are probably a lot less glamorous, and so just be happy for your challenge. At least the only people without problems are dead people.
Yeah, embrace the suck, right?
Yeah. What have
Whatever
been
the
your
phrase is.
challenges? What if I mean just making time to play? It sounds like, huh?
That really is. That's the main challenge is getting to play enough. Um,
Yeah,
I do
resources.
think I do think that and I suppose I can't compare directly to him, but guys like Oscar, right? So Oscar Dominguez, hell of a player. He doesn't play as much as he used to. He's got a family, he's got a business, all these things. But when he made pool his life as a business, or not as a business, when he made competing in pool his profession, right? Versus running a pool hall, having a family, becoming a businessman, basically, he was able to put a lot more hours and effort into practice then. But I think, and I don't know if I heard it from his mouth or from somewhere else, but I feel like he plays just as good or better now with a fraction of the practice that he used to because he can really focus now and he doesn't have to worry as much about the money part. He just enjoys it and he works on it to work on it. So that's kind of where I am. Uh, this is my stage in life. Do I wish I had a table at home or if I had more time to go out and play, make matches and playing tournaments? Of course, but I just got to make do with what I got.
Yeah, so like on this idea, it's like there's a world in which you could say, okay, you know what, I'm gonna get a divorce. I'm just gonna go run away and play pool. But the funny part about that, so you are not likely going to play as well over the next 2 years as you would if you ran off on your wife and played on the road full time.
Of
But
course.
and the challenges that you're facing might be different. Like if you did that, you might be facing challenges of, you know, figuring out how to, crack 700 or how to beat these better players or how to, learning how to, whatever, dodging people that are trying to dodging the courts that are trying to collect child support, all that crap. You'd have to face different challenges. But
Yeah.
but now the challenges you have to face are different. So like one challenge is you have to figure out how do I continue to not just how do I maintain, not just improve, but how do I even maintain with a decreased budget of time? And with this, is it even possible to improve? And if so, what's that path and how can I walk it?
Mm.
And then what is the purpose and the meaning of this? If the answer is progress is going to stall or be slow for a while, how do I find meaning in this journey if it's no longer the journey of just get better, better, better and see how far you can get? If it's like, hey, this little race to see how good I can get and how fast I can get, that, in the beginning, you were getting better and better and better and, so quickly and you were playing all the time. And now if the journey is, man, I'm at a part of the game where it's harder to get better and I don't have as much resources to put in. And now what? Why am I still doing this? So now you've got like some purpose questions to answer and some goal questions to answer and some challenges to overcome that are different than what you originally planned on, right? And so my point is that to you then it would be like there's just as much meaning in you trying to figure out how to maintain your level of play when you're busy at work. And there's just as much level in you trying to find purpose in your journey when you're stalled out temporarily. And I'm not saying you're stalled out. I was just, for example, there's just as much purpose in that as Federer trying to win his next match against Filler in the finals, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, are you asking me how do I try to improve still, or are you just making the comment on the
I was just
situation?
talking about my main point was talking about the challenge because I know that I know I've had to face that the purpose of like embracing the challenge that I'm facing, not the challenge I want to face. And I figured if I was needed to hear that, or if I was processing that, I figured there's a lot of people out there listening that needed to hear that the challenge you're facing is not a problem preventing you from enjoying the challenge you ought to be facing. The challenge you're
Hmm.
facing is actually the challenge you ought to be facing if you just enjoy it. So that was my message. But by all means, tell people how do you keep improving when you're a hell of a player and have limited budget.
Uh, oh man. Oh, okay, here's something, and this is something that I've mentioned to you before about playing naturally versus playing methodically. I don't know if you want to get into that at all now, or if you want to wait for that later.
Yeah, yeah.
But
You can
this
tickle
this
it and
goes,
we'll dive in.
yeah, this goes hand to hand in how I see myself improving lately. It's mostly um, as a guy who's not played super long and has improved mainly by watching videos and getting instruction and just putting a lot of hours into, fundamentals and trying to hit balls right and pay attention when I do that. Obviously, none of that will change. Um, but I've kind of walked back the idea of like perfect fundamentals in my mind more now than I had, 6 months ago or a year ago. So it's so easy to find content for guys like me who want to improve, and they watch like 20 videos, and they all say the same kind of things about how you should stand, how you should hold cue, how you should swing, what good timing is, straight stroke, straight stroke, straight stroke, make sure you pause, whatever it is. So many of these things, and a lot of players don't naturally fit into those mechanics. And I would probably argue that I am much more of a naturally rhythm player than I am a methodical, head down, process oriented player. Um, I think most people who know me or most people who have seen me play would probably disagree with that because I kind of force myself to be that methodical player. But in my heart of hearts, when I ask myself when I play pool, when I'm just playing to play and I have no expectations, I'm a rhythm player, I feel like naturally.
So
Um,
I want to speak. So when I work with people, I've worked with a lot of young players too that are very good strikers. Um, and when you get a guy that's like 17, 18, 19 that just runs around the table and pockets things like a snooker player where you're just like jaw on the floor, this guy's just bombing balls in. There's a lot of people that really rain on the parade of those people. Josh was one of those guys where he shot really straight when he was really young, and people would always say these cancerous things about that won't hold up all night, and under pressure, that's never going to make it. And you got to learn how to think if you'd be good if you learn how to play cue ball. And people start making these little snide remarks, and the reason for a lot of that is because people are threatened. When they see somebody come along and do something really well, then the person that they look in the mirror, they're like, "What's wrong with me? I can't do that. How come I'm not doing that?" And so they get a little nasty and they start raining on people's parades and yeah. And so when I have a guy that comes that shoots fast and loose and pockets everything, the first thing I tell him two things. One, I tell him don't listen to anybody that naysays any of that. Like if that's a super strength, that is special, that is awesome, and that should always be your strength. And whatever you do with your pool game and however you develop your game, that should always try to keep that and build on that. Don't take it away. And that the other thing is that nothing I do should interfere with that. We should be doing stuff that supports it. So, for example, if a guy can bomb balls in forever and just be in the moment and come with a shot and make it in the pocket, let's build on that. And so then if we're going to work on moving or if we're going to work on, position or patterns, or if we're going to work on anything else, it can't interfere with that. What we're trying to do is get the shooter more at bats so that you can win more matches. So by more at bats, meaning when you get a shot, we want to get you more shots you can pocket, not kick shots. We want you to have more open shots, and we want you to have more shots you can make, and we want you to have more opportunities to run out because your break is better and your safeties are better. But we're doing all these other things to support and get that superstar in you more at bats. Not I'm threatened by how you play, so I'm going to change you into a model of me that's less effective. Like I hate that, and I think it comes from a place of insecurity on the part of instructors and or older players and elite players that have been around for 30 years and have to answer why they haven't been able to improve when this guy's young and hungry and fire and everything in. So whatever, I would say the same thing for you is like your strength is good technique, pocket the ball, snap them in, boom, boom, boom. And whatever you do in your journey, that should always look like that. And then all I can say is like there's Jason Shaw plays pretty quick, but he has evolved his pattern play over the last 10 years. In 2015, if you watch some early Jason Shaw, his pattern play was pretty lousy for a high level player, and his safeties were a little leaky, and he didn't always respect every inning as much. He was a little loose, and those things have evolved. And now his patterns are really good. He understands the value of every inning, and he's a little bit more leashed. He's not as reckless, but that evolved, but it didn't take away his swagger and pocketing where he still just wants to run around the table and bang everything in. He's just going to do it a little bit more gracefully and a little bit less clumsily. And so I think there's a way to still be who you want to be, play how you need to play, and then use those other things to support and position you to do what you want to do.
Yeah, I wish I had someone earlier on tell me, when I say earlier on, just a couple of years ago, tell me that, you're not doing anything wrong in the rhythm of how you play. Really during COVID and all these videos started coming out of, how to strike the ball well, how to play with the right rhythm, pre-shot routine, all those things. I wish I had, someone tell me, don't worry about it. Keep shooting the way you're shooting it and work on the reasons why they're telling you those. Don't try to emulate your rhythm, emulate your game after that, because I don't know, I like what you're saying. Don't take away from someone's natural ability.
That
So,
also goes back to what I was saying about how you don't always get better and that there's things you can do to make your game worse. Yeah.
of course, yeah, yeah. And so I don't necessarily thought I made my game worse by becoming more methodical in how I approach it. And it's really hard to get out of that. Like if I'm in a match, I'm a very methodical player most of the time,
So I'm going
but
to
I don't.
ask for let me drill down a little bit here. I'm sorry to use
Go
corporate
ahead.
phrases, but when somebody talks about flow rhythm versus methodical, I think speed of play is a really poor measure of flow
You're right.
versus like there are some guys that flow at a slower pace, and there are some guys that are methodical quickly. So when I hear you say becoming more methodical, what does that mean? What are you doing when you're being methodical that you're not doing when
Y-
you're flowing?
Yeah, I think usually when you're a more methodical player, in quotes there, you're spending time not necessarily to be slow like what you're saying, but you're spending time to go through a checklist, or you're emphasizing the steps to get to pocketing the ball and moving the cue ball, right?
Okay.
Whereas a more natural, flowy, rhythmic player, you know, drives from his butt. I don't know if you understand that concept, but from a performance driving aspect, it's somebody who just drives the car the way he sees it. Somebody who just sees the shot, gets down and shoots it, and is less concerned with a specific routine, whether it's a pre-shot routine or some other process.
Yeah, yeah. So another way to say that is like there are certain things that have to happen, but another question is what part of this are we going to consciously manage versus what part of this are we just going to trust our subconscious to manage?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I, Go ahead. Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you've been trying to consciously manage versus just kind of trusting your body to know what to do? I'm just curious.
Um,
Yeah, that's interesting.
I feel like I've hit enough balls now to trust myself to pocket the ball and move the cue ball in a way where I know how the balls are going to behave. Um, I think while I was learning the game really heavily and studying a lot, it became a checklist of sorts to make sure that I knew where the balls were going. But now, and I don't know if it's just because I've hit more balls now, or if it's that my mentality really is changing. But I feel like I'm not just becoming a faster player for the sake of becoming faster, but it's because I'm intentionally skipping redundancies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah,
No,
so I'm not like
yeah,
checking the ball a million times, and yeah, I'll walk around and I'll give a look, but just be confident and know that know what I'm looking at, and then just pulling the trigger and having confidence in my stroke. It's really easy to be tentative when you're overthinking, physically tentative.
100%,
So
100%.
so I'm starting to trust my body more, um, which I think is a strength of mine is my physicality. And coordination physically. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple things. Of course, the first thing, and I'm sure the audience is thinking about this, is when you learn, there's different phases, right? Where in the beginning you have to learn the thing consciously to understand what it is you're trying to learn, and then as you go through time, you learn to forget, right? You learn it so that you don't have to think about it, not so that you do all the time. The same goes true, like of course, like learning to read. In the beginning you have to learn the ABCs of the sounds they make, and then hopefully by now you can just kind of read. Um, I know some of
Unless you're
the
me.
some of the guys listen. Some of the people that play pool listen. Anyway, but one thing that
Hey, that might get into a subject I might want to touch on later.
fair,
Okay.
fair, fair. So the where was I going to go with this though? That's just the one thing. The other thing though is knowing. So there is a cost to analytical and cognitive activity. So when you start thinking about it, so like I as a thought experiment, I sometimes think about is if how much time after the break in eight ball, if you broke playing eight ball, how much time should you study the table? If you only got 3 seconds before you had to get down and stance and pull the trigger on a ball, or say even 10 seconds, like you're not going to probably come up with the right shot, and you're probably not going to have there's going to be a return on investment of taking a little time to study the table, identifying problems, what balls surround the eight ball, do I need a key ball, what are my options, what are the trouble balls, how many, whatever. But there's at some point there's going to be a diminishing return because if you stood and stared at that table for 10 hours, sketching out every possibility, and then you wanted to get up and run those balls, you might not perform as well as if you just broke and had a little, bounce in your step and just got down and shot. So a little investment is positive, but going down that road, there's a diminishing return, and at some point it becomes a destructive overthinking. And so the same thing is true. I've been doing this with my students lately. I teach them stuff with patterns, and there's certain things I want them to learn how to do. But then towards day 3, I'm like, all right, now to graduate, I want you to tell me after, like, I look at a layout of balls. I'm like, I don't want you to tell me everything you can about this layout of balls. I want you to tell me exactly what matters. So I want you to tell me what I need you to tell me. But anything that you tell me, there's a handful of things that you should tell me about this rack, and the rest of it I shouldn't hear from you, because not only did I not look for that, it's just noise. And it's because I had to start doing this because I had some students that were like, they would want to tell me everything they can. And well, for the 1 to 2, and I want to be here and I don't want to be there and I wanted this. Like, no, no, no. The 1, 2, 3 is easy. The 4, 5, 6 is where the meat. Why are we talking about this? Like, this is not the priority. I'm not here for an information panic dump about everything you can tell me about pool. What matters? And then you being able to tell me what matters and knowing what not to tell me, that's part of the test because I don't want to hear everything you know about pool. I want you to tell me the minimum stuff that I need to hear. And so anyway, it's kind of a fun way to train and to help people
Yeah,
because
yeah, it's a bit of a it's built. You're talking about learning how to filter your thoughts, learning how to filter your process.
yeah, because there's a role that thinking plays in pool, but it's a
Mhm.
small role. But we have to think a lot and study a lot to figure out that role. But the role, so it's almost like an actor that spends 30 hours learning a part, or maybe 300 hours learning a part, and then they play it for 30 seconds. Like you have to learn the role and you have to put in that work, but you're not putting in that work so that you could be a 30-hour. It's not going to be a 30-hour performance. It's going to be a 30-second. It's 5 lines you deliver, and then you're off stage. And that's like the brain and pool. You have to study and learn so that you can go up and perform briefly and get the hell out.
Right. There's a saying in acting where it's you don't learn your lines so you remember your lines. You learn your lines so you can't forget your lines. Right. That way it gives you a chance to play and be creative and really focus on the job. So I think this is similar in that you're saying you really have to focus on it. It's a steep hill to climb at first. But once you get there, like driving a car, it takes a while to learn to drive a car, but then sometimes you don't even know how you get home. You just get home. Hopefully sober. Uh,
Yeah, and the
yeah.
other thing that I've been thinking about since you've been saying this is there are different levels of thought. It's not simply like black and white, like either I need to think about something or I don't. There is like quiet thinking, and then there's more and more loud
Mm,
thinking. And so, like you're talking about driving a car. So when you're driving a car, as long as everything's going smoothly, you're barely thinking about it. But you're very quietly thinking about some things. So you might glance at the light and be like, or you might glance at the other light and say, oh, that light just turned yellow. I'm ready to go pretty soon. But you're thinking those thoughts very quietly. Like they're so quiet, you're not paying attention to them. Now, if a guy on the road starts swerving to their side, then you might give it a little bit more thought. Be like, ooh, are they on their phone? Do I need to be safe? Do I need to look for an exit here? Is this a dangerous? Do I need to do anything? And then there might be situations where, you know, that call your attention to where you actually have to make decisions like, hey, I've been at this red light for a while. It's not turning. Should I just go? Like, is this thing going to turn, or is this a problem, or am I, or like you might have to give conscious attention to like, hey, is this a one way? I see, like, did I make a wrong turn? Am I going the wrong way on a one way? Like, you might actually have to give this some thought, and pay attention and think a little bit louder. So like, there's different levels of thought, and I think when we play pool, there are some things that we have to think about, but the goal is going to be to automate as much as we can, and then even the stuff we think about, it's going to be quiet thinking as often as we can. But then there are a couple times where, no, I have to actually think about this one a little loudly. I don't know. It's just, I think just having levels of thinking instead of black and white. What do you think?
Yeah, I have a question regarding levels of thinking. So let's say you have again background thoughts and then one or two more present thoughts. Is there a different mode of thinking in the levels of thinking, practicing and learning versus competing?
I think that, yeah, I think that I don't want to lump all practice the same, because if you're practicing correctly, I think that there should be large parts of your practice that you're trying to perform.
Right.
I think one mistake people make is that if their entire budget of practice hours, they are thinking loudly to themselves and telling themselves what to do. That's not how you perform very well. And so the purpose of training is to absorb the benefits of thinking, and then it's almost like, I don't really do technology, but like they have like compressed zip files, or like when you compress something. So you take something big and what do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Anyway,
they can literally call it compressing. Yeah.
okay. So fairly, look at me. All right. So you're basically, when you're training, you're trying to take something that you don't know, and then you're going to learn it, but you're learning it in a thoughtful, analytical, cumbersome way. And then you have to like rehearse this and understand it well enough to kind of shrink that so you don't have to think about that so much. It's kind of like a little pattern recognition, and you have this whole thing compressed to a little nugget that you just kind of know that. And so when you practice, part of practice and watching pro pool and studying and training, part of it is going through the time of thinking really hard, bundling stuff up, trying to learn those pattern recognitions and try to, compress those things and download them. But then you've got to be spending hours and hours and hours of practice hitting balls, flowing and performing. And a lot of people, I think, they think that so like the learning process is you got to learn to forget. You got to learn to automate. You got to learn it, then you got to automate it. Learn it and automate it. And I think a lot of people are very controlling. A lot of people are very controlling with their pool growth. And when they're controlling and they're white knuckled on the steering wheel, they think that that growth is all about analytically studying and instructing themselves. And then they don't really perform very well. So I think that because you had asked me, is your brain active differently when you're practicing versus when you're competing? I would say there's a portion of your practice, 10, 20% of it should be study and thinking and compressing stuff. But 80% of it at least should be trying to perform. And then, automating stuff and just trying to do your best performance, which is going to be a very quiet mind. And then, so 20% loud mind study, and then 80% quiet mind perform. And then when you're competing, the way it changes is that when you're competing, you face adversity that you just don't face on your practice table. And so you're going to have situations that come up. So, for example, if you're a race car driver and if you're racing on the track by yourself with no other vehicles around, well, then when you're in a race with a bunch of cars around, you're going to have to be dealing with stuff and thinking about stuff that you wouldn't encounter on your practice table. And so, that can be physical challenges, but it can be a lot of mental challenges that come up as well. So there might be thoughts I'm wrestling with and struggles and emotions I'm wrestling with that I wouldn't on my practice table. And so sometimes those demand some attention. So I would say in general, I think I answered it. 20% should be overthinking in practice. 80% should be performing as close to competition as you can make it. And then sometimes in your competition, just like when that driver starts swerving, you have to give them a little extra attention. During competition, there's going to be times for your brain to play a role when it needs to. But I think the brain should always play the minimum necessary role needed to perform well.
Cool. I like that. Another 80-20 rule.
There you go.
The world is full of them for some reason. That 80-20 ratio keeps coming up.
Yeah, it's interesting. So
anyway, yeah, that all came out from me saying there's a difference between growth as a methodical thinking player, and then I'm sort of returning a little bit back to my roots as someone who really just wants to hit balls. And I find myself actually playing better for it.
Yeah. And if we work together, of course, there's going to be stuff I'm going to try to show you and stuff that I'm going to have you try to do in your game. But the goal, again, just like that Jason Shaw thing, it's not going to be to change how you play. It's going to be learning how to do a few things so that you can play the way you want to play it just a little bit better. Yeah. Cool. Is that what you wanted to say about that, or is there anything missing about that? You also wanted to tickle up when we were talking about reading and language, and I know you were talking about.
Yeah, that's actually it's tangentially related. So this is something I have been studying sort of on my own, on and off for like a couple of years. It's just learning. Anytime I find something out about myself or realize something about myself that I just want to know more about, I try to relate it to the things in my life, pool being one of them. And so you made a comment about reading, which I do not do well. I have dyslexia. And so I did some learning on dyslexia. And it turns out there's a really, really big relationship between dyslexia and coordination, dyslexia and eye dominance, dyslexia and visual problem solving, creating creative problem solving. Yeah, maybe go over this for just a couple minutes, but it's just something that stuck out to me. The more I learned about it, the more I realized, oh, maybe being a bit more of a rhythm player feels more natural to me because of how my brain is wired. Um, and I can get a little bit into that if you like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I've always wondered, like, of course, like when I hear dyslexia, I understand. I don't struggle with that, so I don't really know much about it. The stereotypical understanding is people just spell words backwards. But what does it mean in your world, and how does that relate to your pool journey? Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess let's start there. So, dyslexia, what a lot of people think dyslexia means, yeah, you spell words backwards, or you see words backwards, or you just don't understand how words are spelled, or have a really difficulty. You have a lot of difficulty with reading comprehension, etc. You do have a lot of difficulty with reading comprehension, but that's not exactly how dyslexia works. So dyslexia is, well, first of all, how like what percentage of the population do you think is dyslexic?
You know what? I've
If
never
you had
looked into
if
it,
you had to just put a number out there.
but I would predict that most people underestimate it, and most people have it too narrow, where they think it's some small, spelling impact that it hits like 0.5%. Whereas my guess would be that it's actual, like, more of a learning um, path that maybe affects like 15% of people or something like that. That would be my guess,
Yeah,
15%.
it's pretty close. Yeah, it's somewhere between 15 and 20% of the population has dyslexia. And so now what dyslexia actually is, which is obviously a whole lot more than is like on the books, right? So it's not like 20% of kids in school are are labeled as dyslexic and therefore have a quote learning disability. It is categorized as a learning disability, which sucks as a kid. Um, and that's a whole nother mental issue we can cover another day, but there's a lot wrong with that. Um, because I personally don't see it as a disability, but it is a disability when it comes to specifically reading, which is a learned skill that we have not even evolved into. It's just something we've learned. We're not built for reading. We just learn to do it. Um, so dyslexia really just means there's there's a um, I don't want to categorize it as dyslexia. I'll just categorize it as a non-linear or lateral processing thinker. So what happens is your eyes see information, and that sends it to the occipital lobe, right? And it sends the image to the frontal cortex, and it does the processing, and it says, "Here's the letter I'm seeing. Here's the word I'm seeing." And then it goes and tries to retrieve that word in your mind somewhere in your temporal lobe, right back here on the right side. And and for most people, it finds the word, it finds the meaning, it shoves it back to the frontal cortex, and it puts it in context with everything else that you're seeing. And there you go. You have your word, you have your sentence, you have the meaning, um, or you have the comprehension. With dyslexics, what happens is uh, when your brain sends the signal to go look for the information, it sends it everywhere. It sends it on both sides of your brain. So that's why it's lateral processing, right? It's both left and right hemispheres. And so the issue is that because there's a lot of areas tied with speech and visualization on in various areas of the brain, words get jumbled up and order gets jumbled up. Um, so when you're looking at characters and letters in the alphabet and words in order, they get mixed around for that reason. Is that you're not processing it right. You're
Because
not
it's
looking in the right place.
because it's like it's relaying the message multiple times to different areas of the brain. So would it? Because I'm trying to, like, picture this. Would it be if I looked at a word? Would it be like if instead of seeing one word, it's like my brain saw three or four different words that had similar
Mm,
spellings or similar meanings, or just like it was just kind of like it was just throwing too many things at me or something? Or
it could. I think there are different types of dyslexia, right? So I have a word replacement dyslexia and I also have a visual dyslexia where I see, so if there's three lines of text, my brain will import one line of text into another line. right? So I have to visually make sure that my eyes are in the right spot
Or
as
like
it moves
cover
across
one
the
line at a
page.
time kind of thing. Okay.
Exactly. I actually have an app that helps me read one word at
That's
a time,
that's
and
really
it
cool.
makes me read literally like 5 times faster.
But yeah,
Uh,
the problem, of course, is that, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to hijack. I just think about how I read, and I think that the same way that we don't read words one letter at a time, I don't read sentences one word at a time. I'm a fairly quick reader, and I pick up strings of text and make sense of like I'm biting off sentences at a time. You know what I mean?
yeah, I can't do that. Absolutely.
Okay, so it's interesting. No, it's fair. It's fair. It's just like different people have different things, right? And to be fair, I mean, I maybe I'm just I was given that where I could when I'm skimming and you just grab a group of words
Yep.
and the whole meaning comes through as a sentence at a time instead of a word at a time. But
Right. And
so
and
okay,
that, and
so
that's
it's
because all those words have a specific meaning that you can instantaneously grab the meaning, shove them in a sentence in your mind and make sense of it. But because they're all located in the right spot, or your brain is always looking for them in the right spot, it's easy to do that. But for a
okay.
lateral
So now
processor, that way.
let's run back to tie this in because that means that there's
Yes.
15% of the pool population that's dyslexic. How does that tie into your pool learning and performance?
I actually wonder if the pool population has a higher rate of dyslexics, and the reason is because there is a huge number of dyslexics who are really adept at sequencing. Uh, uh, they have really strong spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, and creativity comes along with dyslexia. So I personally see dyslexia as a superpower. I would never trade it
It's
for the
like you're always
world,
on an
but
acid trip. You're like, you got all the. Anyway, sorry.
I, I I mean, 40% of the world's CEOs are dyslexic or something like that.
Okay.
There are a lot of really good qualities that come with dyslexia that are really all about out of the box thinking, visualization, and thinking non-linearly, right, out of sequence. So when that comes to pool, you could say you could take a non-dyslexic and a dyslexic at the same Fargo rate, and very likely the dyslexic might look at the same layout and very instantly understand the easiest pattern. Um, Not that there's always one pattern, but it could be a lot easier naturally for a dyslexic to look at a pool table and devise a pattern from there. Um, it is also something that dyslexics can do where it's very easy. Now, this is a learned skill, but that anyone can do, but it's very easy for me to sort of imagine what the other side of something looks like, right?
Mm,
So
mm.
I can three-dimensionally, without changing my physical position in my mind, I can three-dimensionally sort of understand what a table might look like from the other side, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So so when I'm talking about playing rhythmically, maybe that means not checking my angles as much because I'm trying to trust my brain's natural ability to understand the table layout and just let my body continue to stay in stroke this way instead of taking the time to walk around and run through my checklist or whatever. Now, I'm not
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
you
No,
should
no,
do
no.
that if you're
No, no, no.
dyslexic.
I just wish we could trade. I'm like, come on over. Let's get to the table. I just want to get to the table. But okay. No, that makes a lot of sense because you might be able to see, you might not need to do some of the things you see other people do. Yeah.
Right. Uh, so there's actually a lot of there's a lot of not resemblance, what's the word? There's a lot of connection between dyslexia and eye dominance. So there are a lot of studies that show that cross-eye dominance is very, very popular in those with dyslexia, but not vice versa. So like I'm right-handed, but have a strong left eye dominance. And I was talking to Alex Lely about this once, and he was like, most really good natural pocketers are cross-eyed have cross-eye dominance. And I don't know where the conversation went after that, but it stuck in my mind that he said that. Um, so I'm just tying that back into this, not for any really thought through reason other than saying cross-eye dominance maybe does help with alignment or depth perception or seeing shot angles, and there's a lot of things that fall into, they're correlated, but there's no causation, right, between dyslexia and cross-eye dominance. Same with handedness. Like you could be ambidextrous, mixed handedness, or be left-handed, right? Like Josh is left-handed. A lot of people say that if you're left-handed, there are different parts of the brain firing, and that's also linked to cross-eye dominance and dyslexia. So, you know, I just think the circumstantial evidence is fascinating without trying to say, if you're dyslexic, please go play pool, go be an 800. It doesn't
It's
work
it's
that way.
it is strange, and I know that there is a large. I wonder, and I don't know, but is there an overrepresentation of left-handed players at the highest level? I mean, Filler and Shaw are both
I,
left-handed,
I
are they not?
believe, yeah, I believe there is. I would have to actually probably one by one go and look at that.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So
yeah,
I'm not sure, but I know that there's definitely a healthy number, and yeah, I think Shaw and Filler. I know Shaw's cross-eye dominant. Is he not? Isn't Shaw cross-eye dominant? He's left-handed, and he's right
maybe.
eye. Yeah,
I
I'm pretty
don't.
sure.
I don't
There
know.
are, but there's also some people like Earl that was a hell of a shooter that's right under his right eye, and Neil Span's that way. Of course, you have the blind,
Well,
partial.
Earl, I believe, is cross-eye dominant, and he forced himself to use his right eye.
Ah, I didn't know that. Okay.
I
In
think
any
I could be
case,
wrong about that.
so I'm trying to think of like, so is there anything that you think is going to change your path, knowing what you've learned?
Yeah, I just think that naturally, um, oh, maybe not change my path, but it's really opened my eyes. The way I've done a lot of this research is just really validated a lot of the reasons why I stepped away from just getting down and hitting as many balls as possible. And I went through that very methodical training route where I just wanted to do everything the right way every time, and found myself you know, not really getting to feel the ball very well. And then as I'm now in this stage where I don't get to practice a lot, I have to optimize my time. And for me, it's just trusting what I already know and trying to get in my body a little bit more. And I think the best way to do that is just to do my best to maybe not force a natural rhythm, maybe not force a flow state or whatever, but to consciously strip a few of those methodical layers back and just allow myself to play the game. And I find myself hitting the ball better than I was maybe 6 months ago, even though I'm practicing less.
Yeah, and what's interesting is too is it's like, so there's a challenge to be done, which is sorting out what stuff should I be thinking about, what stuff don't I need to be thinking about. But even sorting out what you need to be thinking about or not thinking about could be done without thinking about it. Like maybe you don't even need to sit
Oh,
there. You don't need to sit there and go back to the drawing board and say, okay, I'm going to start categorizing all the things I do at the pool table and try to figure out what things I need to think about or not. Because maybe there's some things that change depending on how you're feeling, what the table looks like, how your confidence at the moment, and that maybe you can flow your way through that sorting better than you can think your way through that sorting.
yeah, yeah.
But now I'm thinking about delegating that sorting to the flow, which is now anyway. I'm dude. If anybody that has a headache at this point, I'm sorry. But it's interesting, and here's what I think it ties back to is what I'm going through, the challenges I'm facing, the challenges you're facing, and a lot of times, guys, when we struggle, when we get worse, when we go down roads that are counterproductive, there's just no way to take a linear path that's strictly improving and never take some missteps. And so it's almost like you're playing a game of hot or colder with pool, where in order to grow, you have to try stuff. Now, in the beginning, you're so bad. There's like everything you try is going to make an improvement because you just can't really get worse unless you're like, I'm
Mm,
going to try closing my eyes. I could probably find an exception, but like as you get better and better, some of the stuff you try is not going to work. And so I think what it takes to be a good student is that you have to be clear. You can't get emotionally attached to fantasies and stories. Like I am going to learn this, and this is going to work for me, and it's going to make me go there. And so I'm going to learn this. I'm going to learn this system, and then I'm going to make those shots better than I ever used to, and I'm going to just get better and win all the time. And then you learn the system, and it's not working like you wanted it to, but you're like, no, but this is the way the story I invented in my mind says that this is going to work, and I'm going to make it work. At some point, you're instead you have to be very curious, not furious. You have to be detached. You can't get emotionally. So creating these story arcs and getting attached to them is very dangerous. It's like the scientific process, right? If you're testing something, and if you're working on something, I always think of the Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance with the way he describes working on a motorcycle. When people make bad assumptions, like he had his motorcycle not start one time, and he went through all this stuff, and it was tearing his head apart. He spent weeks trying to troubleshoot and replace stuff. It was out of gas. Okay. It was out of gas. And so he always remembers that though, because what assumptions do we make when we're diagnosing things? And he talks about like how, but when people start getting attached to, no, I know this is the problem. Well, you can say that, but if it's not, you're married to this path, you can spend a lot of time buzzsawing down the wrong road. So I think the first thing is to be a good pool student, you have to be detached from, you have to be open-minded and detached. Like what is, and you have to, because then you can see things clearly because you don't have a horse in this race. You're not trying to, to prove that you're right here or prove that that's wrong here. You're just like, you're open to the feedback that the universe is giving you through your pool performance. And so you're playing a game of hot or colder. And when you get colder, that's not going the wrong way. By going colder, that gives you good information to go the other way. And so if you didn't go the wrong way and you just stayed put because you didn't know which way to go, you wouldn't get any feedback and then you wouldn't get any closer. So colder is not bad. Colder is useful as long as you're not so bullheaded that you're like, no, I know it's this way. I'm going to prove it's this way. So I think if you keep moving, you recognize slumps or downswings or failed experiments are valuable. And then you just keep playing hot or colder and you accept that that's your journey. And that kind of ties in a lot of embracing the challenge, accepting the reality of where you're at and finding meaning and continuing to play that hot or colder game and just enjoying that whole process. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that that game of hot or colder as a student becomes, warmer or slightly cooler or very slightly warmer or very slightly colder as you sort of narrow in on what becomes optimal for you as a player. And it's a little, it's not necessarily the same thing, but it reminds me of what you were talking about earlier, just the little things to change in your game that would make a big difference. And then you went back home and you worked on something and you found it. But those or at least you think you found it. You got to talk to Oliver about that because I'm so curious.
Me too. Yeah, yeah.
But it reminds me as a martial artist of the progression that it takes to really actually be proficient in something in a movement, right? At the beginning, there's all this progress, and then as the years go on, as the belts get more and more colorful, and then less colorful towards black belt, it becomes like you literally learn half of what you need to know the first like month of anything, right? And then as the months and years go on, right? And it's isn't that crazy? Like if I trained playing pool for a month, I could learn half of what there is to know about pool, no problem, in a month from knowing nothing, right? But then if you want to learn everything there is to know about pool, I'm sorry, you got to take another 50 years. It's so crazy how that works. That last 1 or 2%.
Well, we could say the first. We could almost say that the first 80% of your journey is the first 20% of your effort. Okay, I'm sorry. I was trying to work in the 80-20 rule again. But one last thing, and it kind of reminded me of something you said. Reminded me of one last thing. Hotter can also be dangerous when you're playing hot or colder. So colder, some people get really frustrated and discouraged. And they feel like they're going the wrong way and I shouldn't be here. But hotter is dangerous because the ego has so much desire to figure it out, put it together and be awesome and finally get this game and all this. I'm finally going to be the player I want to be and I'll prove this to them and I'll get that guy and I'll win that thing. And it's like our ego is so excitable and has so much desire that when something starts working, so like when I talk about maybe I had figured something out with my fundamentals, I said that like I've thought I figured something out hundreds of times and been wrong. It's like oh, it's just over this hill. It's just over this hill. It's like yeah. It's always over the next hill. It's but and I've had times where I've had what I thought were breakthroughs for days or even weeks that weren't. And they were just I was playing really good. I was in the zone. It felt really good, and I was just aware of how it felt in a way. But that knowledge did not allow me to reproduce that in any kind of future self.
Mhm.
So like I've had plenty of false whistles and false. I think there was a fireman that told me one time. What did he say? He said that 99% of his jobs was like it was bells and something bells and whistles or something. Like basically his whole job was basically putting out like smoke detectors to tell or like gas detector triggers, and like 99% of their job was putting out false alarms. And then every 100th time you save somebody out of a burning building, it's like 99 bells and one anyway. So that's how cool it's like there's so many false positives. And so when
Mhm.
you're going through it, if every time something feels good and you start playing really good, you're like, I got it this time, and now I've got it. I just got to own this and reproduce this. And how am I going to do this? How come it was working yesterday? I can't make it work today. Now, the same way when things get colder, you can get too discouraged. When things get hotter, you can get too excited and start racing down the road. It's like I just said hotter. I didn't say it was way the hell over there. I just said hotter, and you just got crazy and said, hotter. It must be miles that way. Let's go. And you just charged out of the room. I had the thing hidden right over there. Anyway, it's like so. I think that you have to be pretty detached from both the ups and downs. The ups can get you a little too excited. The downs can get you a little too discouraged. Eventually, you just kind of like don't hold it all too tightly. So I don't know. I don't even remember what you said that made me think about that. But when you're talking about automating parts of your game, I don't remember. I'm sorry. That fit in
Well, I think
somewhere.
I think no, it does fit in because that's how I felt about structuring not just like the rhythm of my play, but structuring my literal mechanics, how I strike the ball. I'm quite happy with how I strike the ball, but what's ironic is I feel like the last few months of me hitting the ball, I've changed maybe just a couple super tiny little things. I don't think I strike the ball as straight as I used to. I don't think I strike the ball as pretty as I used to, but I do think I hit the ball better than I used to. Is that weird?
So
Um,
yeah. So when you say better, do you just mean it's more effective? You're pocketing balls well.
I do mean I'm pocketing balls more, but I think my timing is better than it used to be because I'm not so worried on looking perfect.
Mm,
Does that
mm,
make
mm.
sense?
Yeah. It's almost like some of the best, songs aren't perfect, clear. It's like it's a little grunge and they like it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of imperfection goes a long way, and that's kind of also what I'm getting at in terms of balancing being a natural rhythm player versus being more methodical and
It
really
really,
structured.
it
Because
sounds, yeah,
because
yeah.
I've learned to obligate myself to be more structured and methodical and smooth stroking and look like Niels and look like Federer and all those guys. I've tried to become that, and in trying to become that, like I think uh I've unwillingly detached myself from what I'm naturally good at. And so I'm trying to bring some more natural physicality
Yeah.
back in my swing. And I do feel like even though it probably looks not as good and it probably is slightly less straight after contact with the cue ball, I think I'm hitting the ball better.
So is this really cool because it sounds a little elitist, but it's like it's jazz. It's like you got to know what notes not to play or something. Or
Sure.
you got to know what rules to break. And I know in Zen and the other motorcycle maintenance, I remember he was an English teacher or a professor rather, and a lot of people that think that they're going to learn how to write by learning all these principles of alliteration and cohesion and or coherence and that they're going to learn these things and learn these techniques and they're going to shoehorn them all into their paper and it just comes out looking like really really painful. But so that's not how you really write. And I think at one point he said you can only really recognize the rules of good writing by observing a piece of good writing and then making observations and about it. But you can't start with the rules and make a great work. You just make a great work and then use rules to describe what you just witnessed. And so anyway,
Huh.
it was really funny. And it's a good book. If you haven't read it, it's a good book. I've referenced it a lot. It's one that lives in my mind a lot. But back to the other part, you're saying and this goes to the other part about being a good student. You got to be curious and play hotter, colder, but you also have to know what hotter is. And I think a lot of people, when I talk about getting married to an idea or married to an arc, if you have a story that you tell yourself that this is the way to strike, that this is the way to play, this is what good timing and good striking looks like. So therefore, I started going that direction and working on my striking, my stroke, and it helped. So therefore, apparently, pool improvement is a never-ending quest for me to try to make my striking look like that. And the more I strive to look like that, the better I'll be. So we've told ourselves a story where pool is about a quest. We did a podcast on Side Quest years ago, where pool is now a quest to make yourself look like this person. And in the beginning, you were getting hotter, hotter, hotter feedback from the universe. But then at some point, it started getting colder. And you didn't hear that, though, because you were so locked in on, but this is the journey. This is the journey. And I was getting told hotter, so I know it. I already concluded it's that way. Yeah, but you haven't been listening to the signal. So you kept going that way, and it kept getting colder. And then finally, one day, you're like, wait a minute. Why am I getting colder? And you had this eye-opening moment. And the point is, to be a good pool student, the whole point of my side quest episode was nothing. The bottom line is the bottom line. That at the pinnacle, at the hierarchy of pool growth is our performance, is our actual performance, and is our actual play. And so when we think, okay, in order to play better, I need to do this. And then we start doing that, we always have to go back later and say, is that taking me where I want to go? And so if I teach somebody something about their pre-shot routine, or if I teach somebody something about patterns or whatever, if they sit there and try to implement that in their game, they're like, okay, they tell themselves a story. If I work on this, it will help my performance. But then if they get so fixated on that and say, I know this is going to help my performance. I know it's going to help my performance. So I need to do this. I need to do this. If they take their eye off the performance ball and elevate that to become like the pinnacle of what they're striving towards, they can spend years and years trying to work on something that's not really helping their performance because they really have this story that they're committed to. And so I think that just being always open. That's what I was saying. Was a good student. You can't be attached to a certain story that you're trying to prove true or disprove. And you also have to be open to the feedback you're getting and always keep your eye on the bottom line. Now, it's the same way when you're playing poorly, you can't get too global. When you're playing well, you can't get too excited and say, this is the answer to everything. I need to keep going this way. That's exactly what I'm saying. And so, of course, what's hard about pool is that we can have good days and bad days. And we can have people give us extra opportunities where our short-term results work well, or we can break and have 3 really easy layouts in a row and set a new high run and think that, so we can sometimes it's not always the clearest feedback we get about if something's working or not. And so you have to be a little bit calm and thoughtful about it. And, but yeah, so I kind of lost my train, but basically we were going back to the side quest of perfect fundamentals. So basically what I'm saying is I can understand that there's a growth as you get your striking better and better and better. There's an improvement as your striking improves, but there's also a decline when you take your focus off your performance or start becoming too controlling about your striking. And so somewhere there's a place where you can gain what you can gain from emulating good striking. But then you can also, there's another arc besides the striking arc, which is your flow arc and your trust arc. And so where those two meet is like this happy spot where once you say, I don't care what I look like anymore, I'm just going to put the ball in the hole. That's actually a valuable skill. And the striking can, so anyway, they intersect and cooperate with each other. And it's not all of one. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So it's cool, man. I'm glad you shared. It's exciting. So I'll follow up with Oliver and I'll let you know what the hell he tells me. maybe
I'm so curious.
I know what if he's just like, no, I was just joking. I have nothing. I just beat your ass because I'm better than you. What if that's what he tells me? What if he tells me he
seems like a stand-up guy. Okay.
He sends me a message. He's like, I just wanted to tell you, you'll never be as good as me. I'll be like, okay, thanks. Yeah, I saw that too. I figured that out. Somewhere in the mid-second set, I put that together. Okay. That's awesome, man. Well, that was fun. That was fun. I hope
Yeah,
somebody learned something from this, and if nothing else, I hope you guys had a good time tuning in. Uh,
I
I
had a
am
good time.
good. Are you good, Nate? Are you good?
I'm okay at least.
All right, man. I'll turn it off. Until next time, guys. Be well.